Hi, Bonnie here with Sew Inspired by Bonnie with another Tuesday's tip. And today we're going to discuss design placement. I know a lot of people struggle with getting designs on their projects where they want them to be, so I thought we'd go ahead and discuss that and hopefully solve those issues. So let me get my computer set up to make sure that you can actually see me and my head isn't cut off or something like that in the video. And there we are. Okay, it looks like you can see me pretty good. And I hope to see you guys soon here. Oh, looks like some are showing up. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right. The first thing we need to do when we're getting ready for design placement is get our hoops ready. Now I've got in front of me a Baby Lock Brother hoop, but this applies to any hoop. You might want to double check and make sure. On the Baby Lock Brother hoop, they have two little arrows that go together. A lot of times this inner hoop can look the same this way or this way, but there is a wrong side and a right, or I should say a top and a bottom to both hoops. So you want to make sure that you're placing them together properly. And again, on the Baby Lock Brother hoop, there is an arrow at the top and the bottom to show you where that inner hoop and outer hoop should be meeting and matching up. So on the Baby Lock Brother hoop, there are 4 notches, which looks like it shows you where the center of the hoop would be if you were to draw a horizontal and a vertical line. They do also include a template, and all of your manufacturers with the various machines do the same thing. You'll have templates with your hoops. I highly recommend that you take the template and lay it on top of your inner hoop and make sure that you have it right side up. This one has an ABC on it, so I know if I'm reading the ABC correctly that I have it the right side up. And if you look at this carefully, you will see that the horizontal line is in fact along the horizontal center of the hoop, and the vertical line though is to the side of those 2 notches on the hoop. So if you're going by the 2 notches on the hoop for your center alignment, it's going to be about 1/8 of an inch off. So what I like to do is put a mark on my hoop to line up with the marks from the template that comes with our machines. So I'll take my handy little ruler. I love this little 1x6" ruler, and I will take it and I will make a mark on my inner and outer hoop, just extending the vertical line. I don't have to do it on the horizontal lines on this particular hoop because everything lines up perfectly, but I do want to have that line on my inner and outer hoop extended on up so that I know where the center is of my hoop. With or without the template, I'd like to know where the center really is. So that's the first little tip, to make sure that your templates and your hoops do match up. You can see where I've already done the mark at the bottom here, and I extended that little mark on up, and I've just got the little mark up here at the top of the inner and outer hoops, and I'll go ahead and extend that line on here. Now, for those of you that are afraid to put a mark on your hoop, please don't worry, because you can remove the mark very, very easily with rubbing alcohol. So it's really super easy to just remove that little mark. It doesn't have to stay permanent. All you have to do is get yourself a little Q-tip with some rubbing alcohol and it'll just come right off. Believe me, before the video this morning, I was marking one of these and I messed up, and I just took it right off a couple of times because I messed up a couple of times. and redid it. So it's really easy. It's not going to harm your hoops at all. The rubbing alcohol is safe on your hoops. Okay, so now we have the horizontal and the vertical lines marked on our hoops. Now if you do like to use your template, by all means, when you're doing placement, use your template. We all do things a little differently, so whatever works for you. I'm just showing you some of the things I do and some of the little tricks I do. All of this software, I like to use templates, the paper templates, for design placement. And all of your software, no matter how expensive it is or how inexpensive it is, will print out a template for you of your design. So I've pulled up a little design. This one is from our, here's so you can see it a little better. It's from our Airplane Adventures. This is from our Airplane Adventures book, or series. That's the Airplane Adventures, not the book. And I've printed out a template. I just wanted to show you the design so you could see it a little bit more clearly than the template. What I like to do with this template is make sure that it is putting the horizontal and the vertical and the horizontal center lines for you from your software. They all do that, so you'll get your horizontal and your vertical. It should also mark which side is up as far as the design is concerned, so which side it should show up in your design. And then I take my paper scissors and I just kind of roughly cut around the design. You don't have to be exact with this. And you can toss that or keep it for the color information. Okay, so now I've got this little template and it's got my horizontal and my vertical markings. And I'm going to, if this was just a quilt block, let me back up a minute. If this was just a quilt block, not a shirt or something that needed perfect placement, you could just take your quilt block and draw yourself a vertical with a water-soluble pen or one that erased. This one's a Frixion pen, which when I put a hot iron to it, it will go away. But I would make the mark, and then again, if this is just a quilt block, not my template, so I'm kind of backing up. I would put the outer hoop out of the way for a bit. I would align my marks here. I might even draw those lines a little bit longer so they extended all the way on the length of my design. Then I would bring my hoop over, my outer hoop over, and I always put the part that attaches to the embroidery unit facing my belly button. And the reason I do this is because then I have something consistent, so I always know which end is up on my hoop. I can look at my little arrow. My arrow is here on my hoop, and always do this on a flat, hard surface. I always start where the two arrows meet at the top of the hoop. When I get that started, and again, I like to do this standing up, not sitting down, I will turn it off to the side of the table and push the back side of the hoop down. And I'm going to have to stand up. So I know that's going to cut off half of me, but this, I must have had something a little bit smaller. And then again, I push this off to the side, then I tighten it how I want it. I push this down, I pop it out because I've set this, and then I do it one more time. Start at the front, come to the back, and then push it down. At this point, I do not have to retighten my hoop. I just tighten it the first time. And do not tighten it super duper tight. You want it nice and snug, certainly, but you don't want to strip that screw, and you don't want to just tighten it to within an inch of its life. So it's nice and taut. You can hear it like a drum. Okay, so let's get back to the little airplane. But that's just if you're doing a quilt block. I do like to hoop my my stabilizer with my fabric. That's just something I like to do. I think you get less puckering problems that way. But some people do it with just basting around and have no issues whatsoever. But let's pretend that this is a shirt. What I would do is I would try on the shirt, and then I would put this little airplane on the shirt with me wearing it where I wanted it to go, and I would take some Scotch tape, tape it in place, and then go to my hoop. So let's pretend this is my shirt. I see where I want it to go, and let me move this, and maybe I want the plane to go like this, or maybe I want it to go the other direction. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just wherever you want that to go on your shirt, tape it in place. So I'm going to just take this little airplane. I'm going to put some Scotch tape on it. And so he's taped in place. I'm going to take my upper hoop, or I should say my inner hoop, make sure that the arrow is pointing up. And then I'm going to bring my outer hoop, and I'm going to hold on to my little design here. I'm going to bring that other with the part that attaches to the embroidery unit facing my belly button. And then I'm going to line up the horizontal and vertical lines on my hoop as before, and I'm good to go. I will go to my embroidery machine, and if I have to, maybe ooch the needle position a smidge left, right, up, or down, so that it is in fact directly over the crosshairs on my design. Now some, like the Baby Lock and Brother machine, some of them have the snowman sticker. You can, if your software doesn't print out a snowman sticker, you can take a snowman sticker and put it right over those crosshairs and use your scanner to scan it and put it in place. So just a couple little tips right there. However, not all designs, now that works for a design that's well balanced, I say. You know, all the design is pretty well balanced over the center. That sort of technique will work for that very well. But let's say you have a design that's not really centered over the bulk area of that design. So that's the wrong template. Where's my little template? He's down here somewhere. Here he is. Thought I lost him. So you have the bulk of the design over here, and that you have just this little tail of the airplane coming out over here. Most of your stitches are over here, the little tail is over here, but your center as far as the computer is concerned is between the outermost edges of the design. So if you look at the template for this design that I printed out, which is right here, you will see that it looks way off center from the airplane, and that's because our eyes focus in on the bulk of the design. So if you have like a cat with a little tail that goes off to the side, or a dog, or what have you, like this with the plane and the trail of smoke behind it going off, your eye is focused on the plane, not the smoke. Although that's a part of the design, the weight of the design is on the airplane. So what looks to be center really isn't center. So again, what I would do is I would cut this out, and I would keep the little area there that has the little smoke tail, so I could get sort of a visual. And when this stitches out, it's even going to be a little bit less visible than it is right now because it has this white template. And let's say we were putting it on this little jacket. So let me get some of this out of the way. doesn't want to cooperate. I'm going to get that out of the way and this out of the way. And I've already hooped some cutaway stabilizer because this is a sweatshirt and sweatshirts need a cutaway stabilizer. Now there's a couple of things you could do to see the visual of your hoop, and sometimes what I like to do is get out my cutting mat, and you can see right through the cutting mat and see the lines of your horizontal and vertical. This hoop has already gotten the lines drawn on it, the vertical lines, so I know where those are. You can also actually draw that line right on your stabilizer so that you see that, because on this particular jacket, or project I should say, we're going to not be able to see through it at all. We're going to need, and we can't hoop it. We could, but it's sort of bulky and it might pop out. So what I like to do is mark on my stabilizer the center, and then I will take a little spray adhesive, something I just like to do, and just a little bit of spray adhesive. It doesn't take a lot, just a little. You're just trying to get it from point A over to your machine to sew. So it doesn't need to be stitched on or anything of that nature. Then I would set that aside, take my jacket, and see where I like this little airplane to go. Do I want it on the back? And if I do want it on the back, and if I do want it centered, you see having the template helps for a visual of where that design's going to go. Maybe I want it on the front. Maybe I want it, you know, kind of flying up the front of his jacket here. And if I do that, you see it's at an angle. It's not straight at all. Not all designs are going to be at a 90-degree angle straight on your project. In fact, probably most of them won't be. So let's take this. I'm just going to throw it on the back real quick. But you see how having a paper template really helps give you a visual of how your design's going to look before you actually sew it out, and just pray and hope that it's going to be right. Now, I'm just sort of doing this quick because we're doing this live, but let's just say I would probably take a little more time if I was really trying to center this, but let's just say that's where I wanted it to go. What I would then do is I would fold this in half on the line of my template, which isn't necessarily going straight up and down. And I've already gotten a little bit of stabilizer in there, yes, and I've also gotten a little bit of spray adhesive. And then I will look to see where my vertical line is, and I might mark that on the back of my jacket as well. Put my finger there and mark it, so I kind of know where the mark is. And then I'm going to lay my jacket on my hoop on the vertical horizontal, and then I'm going to open it up and kind of smooth it out. I'm not going to stretch the sweatshirt, not going to stretch it. And then I'm going to feel, because on something like this you do have to sort of feel, and I can tell that this is a little bit off from my line, so I can feel the little notch here and just kind of straighten that out. And there it is, ready to go. But since I was doing this live and I just did this cattywampus. If you notice, I always say that I always keep my hoop toward my belly button. Well, this is the up. And see where this says? It's going towards the side. So that's not correct it all. So no problem. You just take it out. These things happen. And take it out because I want this to be folded where the arrow is pointing up. So again, getting a flat surface in your sewing room is sometimes the most challenging thing. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to find my arrow that's pointing up, and I'm going to fold this over right on the line so I have a nice straight line. Again, I have the bottom hoop facing my belly button, and I'm going to find the center horizontal line. And again, it's right there. I still had the mark from before. And I'm going to line this up on the lines that I drew on my hoop, and then open it up. And I see that that looks good, and that looks good, and we're good to go. So you can do that, and then you might want to add a basting stitch and some a topper for the sweatshirt material. But I love templates in a way to figure out where you're going to put your designs so that they will go on your project where you want them to go. Now let's say we have a project where, and this was from my tree skirt. A lot of you have seen the tree skirt that I did, but I had several designs together and it was a little bit more exact. So I needed a little bit better template, not better template, but I needed to be more careful with my planning of my template on something like that where it was going to be repeated around the tree skirt 8 times. I wanted the 3 designs for each panel to be the same all the way around. So what I did was I traced out my pattern on some freezer paper, and I traced out the lines of where the seam allowances were because I didn't want the designs going, into the seam allowances. And that gave me an idea of what I wanted to work with. This is one of the panels of the tree skirt, and then this was a panel that went on the bottom of the tree skirt, and there were 8 panels, and they all had to be, didn't have to be, but I wanted them to look the same on each panel. So I didn't want to just kind of eyeball it and see where it looked great on the tree skirt. I wanted to lay these templates out together and place them on my little paper template. So then what I did, since I had 3 here in a row, once I had them laid out the way I wanted them, then I could use this template for each section. And what I used to do this is I again taped them with just plain Scotch tape onto the template. This is from my Painted Poinsettias, and this is the Vintage Deer Designs. But I put them on my template, and then I got out an owl. Now, or an awl. The awls come with all sewing machines. A lot of them have like an orange handle on them, but they come with your machine. This one I got with my little buttonhole cutter, so it's the same thing, but they actually just cut little holes in fabric to do like eyelets and what have you. But what I did on this was I would mark what was the up for the design. These are all 5x7 designs, but obviously create a larger design by combining them. But they couldn't all be hooped at the same time. So I made the template, drew my crosshairs, my vertical lines and my horizontal lines a lot longer on the template, and then I took the awl and I got on top of my cutting mat and I lined up the center of the awl over my horizontal and vertical lines and my center so that I could draw these lines on my fabric. And let me get just a second so I can explain this better. I'll take this little guy off and we're going to pretend that's not there. And what I did was I laid this, now I obviously had a much bigger piece of fabric, but in fact, I'll just use the wrong side so we don't get confused with that the other lines. So we have our template made. We poked holes at the center and top and bottom on the vertical and the side and one of each side on the horizontal. Now you'll see that on my old template that I did here that I've got way more than just one hole on either side of the vertical, or excuse me, the horizontal line here. And that's because when I put the all over, it wasn't quite centered. I didn't like how it wasn't quite centered over my line, and so I drew an X through that hole, basically telling myself don't use that hole, that one was a boo-boo, and I poked another hole until I got a nice all hole cut over the line, so it was nice and centered over the line. Once I had those and I drew X's through the boo-boo ones, then I put this on top of my panel that was all made up, and I took like a Frixion pen and I drew a little dot where those dots were on my template. Center, 2 for the vertical, 2 for the horizontal, and I would always mark which end was up on my design. So if this was up, I would mark that as up. But then I would take my ruler, and I would do this for all 3 designs at the same time. So I'd have this one, and I would mark it. I'd come over here and I'd mark this one, and I would mark this one, all at the same time. Then I would remove the template. I would come back and I would draw my vertical and draw my horizontal lines. And I would put an arrow as to which end was up for that particular design. And again, I would draw the lines, the horizontal and vertical for each one. And then I could take that to my hoop, get my horizontal vertical lines aligned up with my hoop horizontal and vertical lines, and it will go exactly where I want it. Just make sure that the up arrow for your design is facing the right direction. I think we've all done it at least once where we've accidentally sewed the design upside down or something, sideways, upside down, the wrong way somehow. So just draw yourself a little arrow. It's not going to hurt anything. Again, make these marks with a water-soluble pen, a chalk mark pen, or a Frixion pen, something that you can get rid of after the fact, after you're done stitching. Before you sew out, I need to mention that, of course, you're not going to sew on top of the template. The very first one that we did with the little blue airplane, where did it go? Well, that little template, this little guy, remember when I told you you place him on there and then you line it up? You go to your machine and you line it up over those crosshairs, but take this off before you start sewing. So that's why we use Scotch tape. It's just there for placement. Sort of like if you guys use Baby Locker Brother and you use the snowman sticker, you remove the snowman sticker. Well, you're going to remove this too before you sew. So I forgot to mention that in the very beginning, but I did want to bring it up. Because on these methods, we're making the marks directly on top of the fabric. And then you can take the mark. You know which end is up. And this is up on my hoop. So then I would know to place this up. And again, I would fold this over so that I could see. And again, it's, definitely not just a straight up and down deal. And you can just line it up on the lines you drew on your hoop, flip it over, and you've got it where you want to go. So I hope If you have any questions, just let me know. I will see what we can see here. There's a lot of different ways to tackle placement with designs. I hope I've given you some new ideas, and I hope I haven't confused you with trying to pack so much into a short amount of time. Looks like there's some comments. Doesn't look like there's any questions. So let me refresh my page here to make sure we don't have any questions before I sign off. Get down in here. Oh, hi Margie! And Michelle and Sharon and Kathleen. Boy, there's several here. Okay, I don't see any questions, but if you do have some questions, and I know I was kind of going back and forth a little bit there, so if you do have any questions, please post them in the comments and I will answer them to the best of my ability. If you weren't able to watch this live, I will repost it on my YouTube channel as well as my Pinterest page. So I hope to see you next Tuesday, and I don't see any questions that we have not covered. So until next Tuesday, bye-bye for now.